All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Share to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei 5785, the Tilson family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the shurim and drashos this year as a zuchus for Bisoros Tovos for all of Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan Habo Alinu L'Tova, Stephen Terry Zinn, in honor of the birth of their granddaughter Devorah Eliana Zinn, and in memory of Dr. Zinn's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim Zichron Levracha. Shmuel and Rabbi Karabkin, and the schus for Rabbi Rabbi's cousin serving in the IDF, Binyamin Chaim Pesach Ben Mushachano, and Le'ilu Nishmas, Rabbi's mother, Pasamira Bas Chaim. Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gevant, in memory of Dr. Gevant's parents, Yaakov Meir Ben Moshe Leib, and Sheena Bas Abba, Dr. Bezad and Yamina Salfer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a refuah shalima for Esther Bracha Bas Chayo. And our week of learning sponsors, Leah Sol, in memory of Selma Wolf, Zichron Levracha. May her memory be an inspiration for us all. And of course, we dedicate our learning in the zuchus of our precious hostages. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them home b'shalom and b'karov, in the merit of our holy soldiers who are fighting Am Yisrael's wars on multiple fronts. May they be successful. B'chol ma'aseh yedayim. And I will say again, we've been following the news that came out of Amsterdam yesterday. Overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. That again, so fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv attacked at a soccer game. 10 Israelis hospitalized, 3 unaccounted for, people literally under siege in their hotel rooms, Israel sending flights to evacuate people. Sometimes it is overwhelmingly amazing to contemplate the sheer hatred that Yishmael has towards us. It doesn't even register. I was thinking about this. Think about it just a moment, right? If somebody were to come over to you and say, you know that guy over there, he's Amalek, a bona fide Amalek, Ben Achar Ben from Amalek. The truth is, as much as we have a mitzvah to hate Amalek, to destroy him, just the teva of a Jew is, you wouldn't be, I think most of us would not be able to just perpetrate an act of violence against someone who has not wronged us directly initially. And it is incredible to see, the animalistic hatred, pent up hatred that exists towards our people. Like what, just on a human level, what allows a human being to attack another human being who they have absolutely no relationship with? Where a self-defense, a war, but to attack another human being who you have no relationship to, no shaykhs to, is the deepest bowels of hatred. And that's what the world has towards us. That's what these animals, because they're animals, they're worse than animals, have towards us. And it's overwhelming. And you think, okay, October 7th, we saw that. Okay, so maybe that's a little bit behind us. It's a little bit, and then something like this, it's overwhelming to see. It's heartbreaking to see. It's sad to see. It feels like a dor hamabel. It feels like the lowest and basest behavior of people. It's sad. It's sad, but it also recognizes that at the end of the day, always important to recognize that hatred stems from a much deeper level of the unholy hating the holy. That's really what it is. Chol, mundane, always has a hatred towards Kodesh. That's just the way that the world works. That's already in the womb of Rivka Yemin Bekirba. The children struggled within her womb. Esav can't stand the presence of Yaakov because Chol, mundane, can't stand the presence of Kedusha. It's a burden we have to bear. It's a responsibility we have to bear, and it should remind us. Not that people hate us, that we know. We don't need any reminders for that, but it should remind us of the incredible kedusha that we possess as individuals and as a nation. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give a refuah shlema for all of those who are injured. Kadosh Baruch Hu should allow, who knows, 3 Jews unaccounted for. Overwhelming. More people missing, more Jews unaccounted for. Kadosh Baruch Hu should just bring Mashiach, should bring Geula, should see that our people have had enough of contending with this unprovoked unprovoked and unimaginable hatred. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should see that we've had thousands of years of this. It's enough. Should bring the Geula, should bring Mashiach. Klal Yisrael should know bracha, Klal Yisrael should know hatzlacha, and Klal Yisrael should only know besoros tovos Eretz Hashem for generations to come. I will say, let's begin. We have a lot to do today. Today's daf is Kuf Lamed Vav 136, and we are picking up Eretz Hashem on Kuf Lamed Hamid Beis 135b. We are picking up Eretz Hashem. Let's actually just go back Va'ot Tashma. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says Va'ot Tashma Rabbi Lazar Amra the Shalach Rabbi Mishmei Rabbi Avo have a Yodim Sheshalach Rabbi Lazar Legol Mishum Rabbeinu Shchiv Mirash Amar Kisvu Utnu Mana Leploni Umeis in Kosim Menos Shema lo gamar lahaknoso ela b'shtar ve'in shtar shkoyach. It's the president. It's the president. Right? The president deal with the pull strings. All right. So we'll say. So the Gemara says as follows. Thank you. So we'll say. So again, remember this is our topic. Shchimira goes ahead. Shchimira goes ahead and says, "Kisvu utinu manal plan." Remember again, as we've been, don't turn it off. Okay. And so now Shchimira. Remember again. So the halach is that a Shchimira has the ability to transfer property without any formal mechanism, even just through his words. Now we're dealing with an interesting case where a shchimira says kisvu utenu, write and deliver it. So the problem is now the shchimira wants a shtar. If he wants a shtar, that's fine as long as we execute it before he dies. The problem is if he dies, you can't go ahead and write a shtar posthumously. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, let's investigate this. So the Gemara says, "Mighty badek." What does it mean? What does it mean investigate it? Kiyasar Avdimi Amar Daitiki Mevatelas Daitiki. So Rabbi says, so first of all, there are 12 halachas being stated over here. Number one, remember, a daitiki is a deathbed gift. A deathbed gift. One deathbed gift could annul or could overcome, or could annul a previous deathbed gift. Meaning what? Let's say Reuven goes ahead and says that when I die, I want my property to go to Shimon. Okay, and then he changes his mind and he says, I want my property to go to Levi. Reuven could do that as long as the property has not been formally transferred as a matana, as a gift, right now, but rather it's only going to be chal when Reuven dies. So he has the ability to change his mind about that. That's what it means, daitiki mevatelas daitiki. If you look at the Rashbam says, shchimira shekasav nechasav la'echad. So shchimira, so Reuven wrote in a document, when I die, my property should go to Shimon. V'chazer v'kasav la'acher. Sheni kodem rishon lo kona. Shai shchimira yochal lachzer b'matanoso kidamina parak mishameis. So Moshe says, so again, now remember, there are different ways that a shchimira could convey property. A shchimira could say, my property hereby belongs to, right now, hereby belongs to Shimon. So if Reuven says that, my property now belongs to Shimon, that is a transfer that has occurred now, a matana that's occurred now, no backseas. But if he says, when I die, write in the document, right, Reuven writes in the document, when I die, my property goes to Shimon, okay, that's fine. Then a day later, he decides, you know what, Shimon didn't come to visit me, I'm giving it to Levi, he has the ability to do so. That's what it means. And so the second document invato the first. The Gemara said, furthermore, that's not really our topic. Shchimira sha'amar kisvu utenu mana leploni umei. Similarly, again, if a shchimira writes, or shchimira says, write a document and give a mana to Shimon. Right? So Reuben is, we'll just call it shchimira. Shchimira says, go ahead and write the document, and in that document convey a mana to Reuven. Umeis, and now what happens? Shchimira dies. Now Shchimira died before we had the ability to write the document. So what do? So the Gemara is like this. Rowan, we analyze the following. Im kimyafas kocho kosvin ve'im lav in kosvin. So we'll say this is fascinating. Now the shaila is as follows. We ask ourselves, why did Shchimira want to write the document? Now there are two possibilities. Possibility A is that he wanted the document to serve as the mechanism for transfer. Possibility 2 is that no, the mechanism for transfer are just the words of the Shchimira. What's the document for? The document is for documentation, just proof for Reuven that he is the owner of the mana. What's the nafkamina? Here we go. The nafkamina is like this. If Shchimira dies before the document is written, you cannot write a document that is the mechanism of transfer after the death of the grantor. You can't do that. You can't do that, right? Because that's a posthumous transaction that can't happen. However, if the point of the document was just to go ahead and serve as a proof, a document of proof, that halacha l'maisa, that Ruvain was the recipient or is the owner of the money, that's fine. You could write a proof document even after the death of the Shchemira. You can't write a transfer document after the death of Shchemira. So that's Rabbi Yochanan, that's what he means when he says, Tibadek, that a Shchemira said, Kisvu utenu mana leploni. Write a document and give a mana to Ruvain, and then Shchemira dies before the document was written. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Tibadek. So what do? We have to analyze. Why did Shchemira write a document? Did he want the document because that's a mechanism of transfer, in which case you can't do that after Shchemira died? Or did he want a document just as a source of proof, in which case you could even do that after he died? Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: Master Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel, Rabbi Bar Mamel raised the kasha. Bari Shamar Kisu Tnumana Leploni Umeis in Kos Venosnin. So if a healthy person, very regular guy, writes Kisvu Tnumana Leploni, and then he dies. So the halacha is you cannot write that document after he died. And I will say now the assumption is over here because by a bari, when he writes Kisvu Utnu, right? What does he mean? That document is a document of transfer, and you cannot go ahead and create a document of transfer after the death of the grantor. The Gemara says, what do you see from here? Hashchimra kosev enosni. You can infer from this that it's only a bari, but a shchimira, if he wrote kisvu utenu and then he died before it was written, you could write it even after he died. So it's casual we said before. So the Gemara says, no. Humosavavu mefarikla b'miyafa es kocho. The Rebbe says clear, is what we just answered before. It depends on why the document is being written, right? If the document is being written just as a form of proof for the recipient, then you could even write that after the death of the shchemira. If it's a document to effect transfer, then you can't do that after the death of the shchemira. Incredible. Someone says, by the way, Heichi damim yafes kocho. How is it? Like, how do you know? Is it in other words? Now what the Gemara is asking is it possible to see kind of like in the document itself? It's possible to see in the document itself what that looks like, what that distinction looks like. Top of Kuf Lamed Vav 136a. Kidam Rav Chisda v'kanina minei mosif al matanasa da. So we'll say hachanami da amar af ksovo bechasumu v'havalei. So we'll say so. In other words, so Rav Chisda explains. Rav Chisda explains that the way it's written in the document is v'kanina minei, right? We acquired it on his behalf. Mosif ha'matanas ada. In addition to this, matana. If you look in the Rashbam, right where the short lines start, about 3 lines in, it's the middle of a Rashi. Rashi says, "Hechidam mi'afes kochal am Rav Chisda v'kanina minei mosef ha'matana sada." Klomar hakinyan eino ela tosefes ba'amal liyafos es kochal. So we'll say, so it's written in the document. It's written in the document that we, the witnesses on this document, acquired it on his behalf in order to bolster his ownership. So in other words, so that lashon by definition indicates that the recipient acquired the gift. How did he acquire the gift? Because the shchemira conveyed it to him. The shtar, and therefore again, I want to remember again, when you have a shtar, often what the shtar includes is that the witnesses are acquiring something on behalf of the recipient. That additional kinyan is just to bolster his ownership. But that additional kinyan does not affect ownership. Okay? Itmar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha. What's the halacha? Kosvin v'nosnin. V'chin Amarava Amarav Nachman halacha kosvin v'nosnin. So we'll say halacha l'maisa. The way the Gemara paskins is that again. So let's take a step back. So what we're left with essentially are two. Well, there are more than 2 models, but for our purposes right now, 2 models of matnas shchemira. Classic matnas shchemira is Tnu mana leploni, right? Shchemira is on his deathbed. He wants to convey property either as a gift now or even a posthumous gift. That's fine. We're going to talk about this. Either way works. He could just do it verbally. That's the power of a shchemira, right? The power of a person on his deathbed is that halacha l'maisa. Again, he could convey ownership of property even without any formal kinyan. When does it get complicated? When he writes kisvu utenu. Kisvu tenu, right? Write it down. So now we'll say, now let's say he dies before we write down the document. Can we write the document after his death? So now what we come out with is it depends. If it's a transactional document, the answer is no. Because you cannot affect a transactional document for someone after they're dead. It makes sense, right? So in other words, if the shchemira wants to convey ownership of the property through a document and now he's dead, you can't create that document. However, if essentially it was just a proof document, it was just a document so that that the Shechina wanted the recipient to have written proof that he received this gift, you could write that even after the death of the Shechina. There's a tremendous Mosar Haskell in this whole Shechina, right? This idea. What do you see from here? I know there's a Mosar Haskell in everything. What's the Mosar Haskell in Shechina? That even on your deathbed, you could affect change. The greatness of this halacha is that here is this guy Shechina. Shechina is a guy who's going to die imminently. And what does the halacha say? He could totally change people's lives. How? Just through his words. Right? This goes to Ploni, this goes to Ploni, this goes to Ploni. He could totally go ahead and reshape the landscape of his life, reshape the landscape of other lives. How? By verbal declarations. Even a Shechina has the power to affect change. Alachas kama v'kama, all the more so, person who is not a Shechina. I would say sometimes we underestimate our ability to affect change. We underestimate our ability to make a difference in this world. If you see what a Shechina could do from his deathbed, alachas kama v'kama, what we could do in life while we still have our full faculties. Incredible Musar. Says the Mishnah, Hakosev nechasav lebanav tzarach sheyichtov me'hayom ula'achar misa divrei Rabbi Yehuda. What's another interesting sugya? So once again, Shechina. No, I'm sorry. This is Bari. This is a healthy person, right? The healthy person who wants to go ahead and go ahead and assign his property to his son. The Rashbam actually writes over here, Hakosev nechasav lebanav, Bari sherotza lisa isha, ve'ein rotza l'shabed nechasav li'ishto, pen yafsidu banim sheyesh lo mi'ishto rishona, v'rotza lichtov lahem nechasas. Well, so the case would be like this. Reuven's married to Rachel, right? Then what happens? So now Reuven's marrying Rachel. Rachel passes away. Reuven and Rachel had kids, and now Reuven's marrying Leah. Now Reuven has property, but he wants his kids from Rachel to have his estate, not his kids from Leah. So what does he do? He writes his property to his kids. So what happens? Rabbi Yehuda says like this: if you go ahead and you want to write your property to your kids, you have to include in that you have to phrase the gift that the gift takes effect from today and after my death. Now the Rashbam goes on and he says over here, he says, "V'rotze lichtov lahem nechasav la'achar mosa el shiyocha peros b'chayav tzarich sheyichtov mihayom ula'achar misa temashra mihayom yekanoi lecha haguf levado ula'achar misa te'nigmeres hamatanas." Well, now listen to this. So now, what Reuven wants to do is like this. He wants to assign his estate to his kids, but to his kids from his first marriage. But he does not want to lose usage of the estate. So Rabbi Yehuda says there's a very simple mechanism. What do? You say, I hereby give my estate to my children, mehayom, from today, ula achar misa. At first glance, those seem to be two contradictory statements. Is it today or after death? And the Gemara essentially, Rabbi Yehuda says it's both. Mehayom says, I am hereby conveying title, Reuven's conveying title to his kids today. But Reuven retains usage. After his death, usage goes to his children. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says, no, Eino Tzarchi, don't have to write it. In other words, Rabbi Yossi doesn't disagree with the mechanism. He just holds you do not need that phrase of mehayom ula'achar misa. Okay, we'll see in the Gemara what that means. Hakosev nechasav lebanav la'achar moso. So we'll say again, this same case. A father goes ahead and writes. So this is our case we're dealing with. Healthy guy, Reuven's a healthy guy. He wants to assign his property to his kids, but he wants to retain usage of it. So how do you do that? You write, according to Rabbi Yehuda, mehayom ula'achar misa, from today and after death. So that means Reuven's conveying title today, but retains usage till his death. After his death, Peros, usage goes to his kids. According to Rabbi Yossi, you don't need that lashon, but both agree on the concept. Now we'll say, so now here's what's interesting. So now Reuven is a good, healthy guy. Let's say now Reuven's going to live another 20 years. So now, what's the status of the property between the time that he makes the gift and the time that he dies? So the Gemara says, first wide line on Kuf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph 136a, Ha'av eni yachol limkar b'nei shein ksuvin leben. So on one hand, Reuven the father can't sell the property, right? Why can't he sell the property? Because he's given title to his sons, right? Now the son also can't sell the property. Why? Because the father has usage. as usage. So the Gemara says, so therefore, again, essentially, neither could sell the property for the duration of the father's lifetime. Machar ha'av muchurat shemas. If the father does sell the property is sold until when? Till the father dies. At that point in time, full ownership vests in the son, and he could take it. Machar haben. If the son sold the property, if the son sold the property, then the purchaser has no rights in that property until when? Until the father dies. Okay, beautiful. So let's analyze. So let's analyze this. Right? So according to Rabbi Yehuda says like this: Reuven wants to essentially convey ownership of his estate to his sons from his first marriage, so that any children from a second marriage have no rights in that estate. Okay, so what does he do? At least according to Rabbi Yehuda, he gives a gift, and in the gift he writes, this gift is chal mehayom, from today, ula achar misa. And I would say, what are the mechanics of that? The mechanics are that Reuven is conveying title today, but retains usage until his death, and upon his death, usage of what we call peiros go to his children. So the Gemara says, why does this work? The Gemara says, Hatznan, we learned, he said, get ve'eno get. So listen to this. Let's look at a parallel case. Reuven is divorcing his wife Rachel. And what does he say? He gives her a get, and he says, this is your get, mehayom ula'achar misa. From today and after my death. The Gemara says, by the way, what happens in that case? Get ve'eno get. Get ve'eno get means suffix. We have no idea what he's talking about over here. So we'll say, why? Because the Gemara says, so what do you see from here? Furthermore, if Reuven dies, Cholat says, V'lo misev emes. Rachel has to do chalitza. She can't do yibum, she has to do chalisa. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that Allah it doesn't work. To which the Gemara says, no, apples and oranges. Hasam misaf galon itna havi ichazara havi. Here's the difference. In the get case, when a man says, this is your get mehayom ula achar misa, we're not sure what is he doing. Is he saying that the get is chal retroactively to today, right? When I die, the get is chal retroactively to today, which technically could work. A tonight could work. Or is he retracting and saying, at first I was going to give you the get as of today, I changed my mind, and now the get only takes effect after death. The problem is, the first lashon works, the second one does not, because there's no such thing as a pastrumis get. So because we don't understand what it is that he's saying, therefore it's safek migurashes. However, over here, aval hacha hachi kamar. Here in both in this case, we understand what he means. He's saying gufa kani me'ayom peru la'achar misa. We understand exactly what he's saying when he conveys this gift. When Reuven conveys this gift, and he says to his kids, "This is you. I'm giving you this property me'ayom ula'achar misa." There's no ambiguity. We know what he means. What does he mean? I'm giving you title today, retaining peros for myself, usage for myself until I die, and then when I die, I'm giving you over peros. We understand that's what he means. Okay. Rabbi Yossi says, Inu tzarich. Right? Rabbi Yossi says, you don't need this lashon. So Rabba bar Avua Chalash was a good story over here. Rabba bar Avua became ill. All legabe Rav Huna Rav Nachman. Rav Huna Rav Nachman came to visit him. So the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Huna Rav Nachman. So Rav Huna said to Rav Nachman, Bai mine halacha Rabbi Yossi. Ein halacha Rabbi Yossi. Listen, you need to ask Rabbi Bar Avua, is the halacha like Rabbi Yossi or not? In other words, in order to make this kind of gift, do you need this phraseology of mihayom al achar misa? Rabbi Yossi, you have to appreciate something. We've seen this many times. You would think someone is ill, and he's ill enough that people are coming to visit him. It means that he's pretty seriously ill. Leave him alone, right? Leave him alone. What he's trying to ask halachic shilas over here. So else you have to appreciate something very profound. Once upon a time, Torah Shebal Peh was Bal Peh, right? The verbal Torah, the oral law was oral, which meant that when a Rebbe died, any information that he had not shared with his students went to the grave. So you see this all the time in the Gemara, that when a particular Rav would become ill, the students were there, and they were peppering him with questions, right? They're trying, it's incredible, trying to extract almost as much information as they could before the Rebbe left this world. It's such a profound idea. So Rav Bar Avua is sick, right? Rav Nachman and Rav Huna come to visit him, and Rav Nachman says to Rav Avua, Rabbi Nachman says, Rabbi Avua, ask him, just ask him. You can imagine, you ask him, right? Ask him, does the halacha follow Rabbi Yossi or not? Do you have to say Mehayom La'achar Misa or not? So Amalei, Rav Nachman says back, time with Rabbi Yossi lo yedano halachi b'minei. So Nachman says, Rav Huna, I don't even understand the logic of Rabbi Yossi. So I don't understand the logic. How could I ask Rabbi Bar Avua if the halacha follows him? Amalei, so Rav Huna responds back to him, don't worry about that. Amalei at b'minei I halacha ilo v'time ana amin alecha. I'll tell you the logic, but you go ask Rabbi Bar Avua. You ask the Shaila, does the halacha follow Rabbi Yossi, and then I'll tell you the logic. So sure enough, again, so Rav Nachman goes to Rabbi Bar Avua. And Rabbi Bar Avua said the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi that you can make this type of gift even without the phraseology of Mehayom La'achar Misa. Basra denafku Amrlei. So when they went out, so they got from Rabbi Bar Avua that the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi. And as they're walking out, so Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, Amrlei Hainu Tamid Rabbi Yossi da Amar Zmano Shel Shtar Mochiach Halav. This is fascinating. What's Rabbi Yossi's logic? Rabbi Yossi's logic is the document is dated. So we'll say, what does a date do? So a date says that the transaction in some form is chal as of the date in the document. So Rabbi Yossi says like this: when the father goes ahead and gives his son conveys ownership of his property, what did the Sefer Sobel say? In general, Rabbi Yossi is going to say like this: a father is not going to give away his property to his kid, right? Why not? Because the father still has to live, right? Remember, this is not a shchidmira case. This is a bari case. So b'pashtus, I'm not signing my property to my kid because I need it. So what is the gift? So Rabbi Yossi understands the gift is what the father is saying is, I'm giving you title as of today. I'm retaining usage, and when I die, you get the usage. So now the Gemara says, and Rabbi Yossi says, you don't need that phrase, Mehayom La'achar Misa, right? Why not? Because that's understood in the date, right? The date says this transaction is effective as of today. Which transaction? Conveyance of title, retaining of peros, and upon death, you, my son, get the peros as well. That's it. That supports this. Rabbi Yossi Omer Rabbi Yossi says you don't have to go ahead and write the phrase Why? Because the date essentially does the same thing. Fascinating. So we'll say now there's an interesting shiloh over here. Bakna Mahu means what happens. Well, take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Bakna Ma'u, it's in the middle of the wide lines, like punkt in the middle of the wide lines. Bakna Ma'u, Bishtar Shekasav Bokinyin, Bi Pligi Rabbi Yehuda, Umatrech Lemichtav Mihayom. So here's what's interesting. What happens if the document, it's the same case, right? Yaakov wants to convey property to his sons Reuven and Shimon, because he was married to Rachel. Rachel died, and now he's going to marry Leah. So what happens? He doesn't want Leah's kids to. He doesn't want kids from a second marriage to inherit. He wants to give it to his kids. So now, remember, with Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, how do you write such a shtar like that? Rabbi Yehuda says you have to write in there Mehayom La'achar Misa, that this transaction works from today and after my death. And the way we understand that is, I'm giving you over title today, retaining peros, usage for myself, and upon my death, usage goes to you, my children. Okay, Rabbi Yossi says you don't need that. You have the date. The date says the same thing. The date essentially says title goes as of the date in the shtar. Peros comes after I die. Fine. So we'll say, what about if you have a document that has a lashon of kinyan inside of it, right? That in the document itself, there's a lashon of conveyance. According to Rabbi Yehuda, does that take away the need for the phrase Mehayom La'achar Misa? That's the shayla. So no. If the document itself has a lashon of kinyan, then you don't need that phrase Mehayom La'achar Misa. Rapapi says, Ika akinaisa de tzarech, the Ika akinaisa de lo tzarech. Sometimes you have wording that does require mehayom la'achar misa. Sometimes you have wording that doesn't require it. How so? So akniye v'kanina minai. Supposed to say if the wording is as such, akniye, acquire it, and then the witness is right, we acquired it on his behalf. Lo tzarech, then you don't need the phrase mehayom la'achar misa. Kanina minei v'akni minei. But if the order is reversed, we acquired it from him, or I should say on his behalf, and he acquired it, or go acquire it, you do need mihayim l'achar misa. And I will say, we're not going to get so into this now because the truth is the Gemara is going to reject this in just a moment. Maskiv Rav Chanina Misura, so Rav Chanina Misura raised the kasha, mi midi da'ana lo yadinan v'safri yadi. So Rav Chanina Misura said, first of all, I never heard of this distinction. I never heard of this distinction of this type of wording in the shtar. So we, the Rabbanim, never heard of it. The Sofrim, right, the scribes heard of it. The Gemara says, v'sha'alu l'safri dabaye. So sure enough, they asked about this to the scribes of Abaye, v'yadi, and the scribes actually knew about it. The Safri de Rava v'yadi. They asked the scribes of Rava, and the scribes of Rava knew about it as well. Rav Huna Rav Yeshua Amar, bein akniye ve'kanina minei, bein kanina minei ve'akniye minei, lo tzarech. So we'll say, so ultimately again comes along Rav Huna Rav Yeshua and says the truth is it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter which type of lashon of hakno, which type of lashon of kinyan you have, and what order it is. If there's a lashon of kinyan in the shtar itself, everyone agrees that you do not need mehayom la'achar misa. So we'll say just to show you. Well, let's ubeduchran piskami dahava ba'an pana pligi. So we'll say, what does that last phrase mean? If you take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says as follows. The Rashbam says, "Ubeduchran paskami haynu shtar edus below kinyan zichron dvarim below zichron kinyan haynu krav nacham d'amra haknoa eno tzarech." And we'll say if you have a dak, where does the machlokas come up? So we'll say, let me tell you this outside for just a second. Essentially, what's coming out of here is as follows, right? Let's go back, right? Yaakov, father, wants to convey ownership of his property to his sons. He is a total healthy guy, not a shchimera. So what is he doing? He's writing a document. What does Yaakov want? Let's go through. What does Yaakov want to accomplish? What does he want to accomplish? He wants to convey title today, but wants to hold on to usage until he dies, and then upon his death, the peiros, the usage will go to his kids. How do you do that? Machlokes Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Huda says you need to have the phrase mehayom ula'achar misa, from today and after my death. Rabbi Yossi says you don't need that because you have the date. The date effectively says the same thing. Now the Gemara qualifies, and the Gemara says, by the way, where does this machlokes come up? Only if the shtar, the document itself, makes no mention of kinyan, of acquisition. But if the document makes mention of acquisition, then everyone agrees you don't need that phrase of mehayom la'achar misa, which makes sense because the document, you have the date and the lashon of kinyan in the shtar, and that tells us the mechanism of the transaction, which is father is conveying title today, peiros after his death. Incredible. The Gemara says, where do they argue? So where's Machlokes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Huda? Only when you have a document that makes no mention of a kinyan, and a document, so to speak, that's just an eidos. It's just there as a proof that a transaction occurred. So when there's no lashon of kinyan in the shtar, that's when you'll have your Machlokes. Rabbi Huda will say the shtar has to say meyom la'achar misa. Rabbi Yossi will say it doesn't need that because you have the zman. Okay. Amrav Kana Amri Slishmai Tekhamid Rav Zvid. Minarda. I said this in front of Rav Zvid of Narda. Va'amrali asun hachi masnisla. This is how you guys quote it. Anan hachi masnilan. This is how we quote it. Amar Rav Nachman. B'hakna eno tzarech. When the document itself has a lashon of kinyan, everyone agrees you do not need the phrase mehayom ula'achar misa. Bein akniye v'kanina minei, bein kanina minei v'akniye, whatever the order of the lashonos are. Lo tzarech beduchran piskami dahava ba'an pana pligi. But again, when the document doesn't have any mention of kinyan, and all the document has is essentially it serves as a proof to the transaction, that's when halacha l'maisa you have our machlokes. Incredible. So we'll say akosei v'chasel banav la'achar moso. So we'll say. So I just want to point out over here. By the way, how do we paskin? The Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yossi. like Rabbi Yossi, Zmano shel shtar mochiach. You do not need the phrase mihayom ula achar misa. Rather, we understand. Halacha understands what's happening in a case like this. When a healthy father gives his estate to his kids, we understand halachically what is occurring over here. Father is giving title now, retaining usage for himself, usage to be given over after the death of the father. The date itself in the shtar tells us everything we need to know, and I don't need an additional lashon ultimately of kinyan. Incredible. Incredible. Let's go right. It says the Gemara, Hakosid nechasav l'bno la'achar moso. Person goes ahead and writes his, so this is the first line of the Mishnah. Person writes his estate to his sons after his death. Itmar, machra ben b'chaya avu mesa ben b'chaya. So we'll say now let's go back. So remember the Mishnah said really, so now after the father makes this gift until the father dies, neither is really allowed to sell the property. Right? The father can't do it because the son has title. The son can't do it because the father has usage. Say Itmar. What happens if they did it? So what happens? So Yaakov gifted his property to Reuven. Reuven now sells the property while Yaakov is alive. Okay? Then what happens? Unfortunately, Reuven predeceases his father. So son sold the property while his father is alive, and then son predeceases his father. What happens? Amud Bezer will say, Rabbi Yochanan lo kana lokeach. So Rabbi Yochanan says the purchaser does not acquire it. Now we'll say, now what's the chiddush over here? The chiddush over, so let's just play this out, right? So Yaakov is the father, gifts the property, gives title to Reuven, but retains usage for himself. So Reuven can't really sell anything, right? Because Reuven at the end of the day doesn't have usage. So what Reuven can do is, if Reuven does sell the property, what does the Mishnah say? When does the sale become valid? When does it become valid? When the father dies, right? So when Father Yaakov dies, Reuven becomes the complete owner of this estate. Reuven can sell the property, he can do whatever he wants with it. So now here's what's interesting. So Reuven sold it, right? So Yaakov gifts the property to Reuven, gives him title. Yaakov's still alive, Reuven sells the property, and then Reuven predeceases Yaakov. So now he will say, what's the shaila? So Rabbi Yochanan says, lo kana. Lo kana means even when Yaakov. So now let's say Reuven sold it to Levi. Levi's an unrelated purchaser. So now comes along Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, when Yaakov dies, Levi still doesn't acquire the property. Look at the Rashbam. First Rashbam kuflam above Ambeis. Lo kana lokeach afil l'chishiyamo sa'av achakach sheme'olam lo hayu ru'uyin lavo lidei ben el yachzu liyarshei av umiyu. So we'll say, so again, Rabbi Yochanan says that even upon the death of Father Yaakov, purchaser still doesn't acquire it. Now we'll see why that is in just a moment. Reish Lakish says no, no, it's definitely true. In other words, during the lifetime of the father, Levi the purchaser does not acquire it. But when Yaakov dies, when Father Yaakov dies, Levi acquires the property. So we'll say, what's the machlokes over here? So here we go. Rabbi Yochanan Amar lo kana lokeach kinyan peros ke kinyan aguftami. So we'll say, listen to this. So this is a classic machlokes. Rabbi Yochanan says, I'll tell you why the purchaser doesn't acquire it even upon the death of the father, because the truth is, son Reuven really never had the right to sell it. Why didn't he have the right to sell it? Because usage is tantamount to ownership, and therefore effectively Reuven sold something that was not his. In other words, here's what's interesting about this. Even though, what did Yaakov do? He assigned title to Reuven. Interestingly enough, according to Rabbi Yochanan, title is not what really determines ownership. What determines ownership? Usage. And therefore, again, because Father Yaakov retained Peros, usage for himself, he's effectively the owner. His son Reuven's sale was totally non-effective, and therefore when Reuven predeceases his father, and even though later on Father Yaakov dies, Levi the purchaser does not acquire it. Because again, essentially Reuven sold something that wasn't his, because kinyan peros ke kinyan aguf. He who has usage, which in this case was Father Yaakov, is effectively the owner, and therefore Reuven sold something that was not his. Incredible. So that's Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish says, kana lokeach. Right? Reish Lakish says, no, it works. Now, what does it mean it works? When Father Yaakov dies, Levi gets the property. right? Because remember again, Reuven sold it. Reuven sold it during Yaakov's lifetime. Then Reuven predeceased Yaakov. So when Yaakov dies, so Levi obviously won't get anything while Yaakov is alive. Everyone is agreeing upon with that. But when Yaakov dies, Levi the purchaser gets it. What's his logic? Kinyan Peros, Lavka Kinyan Aguftami. Rish Lakish's logic is usage is not ownership. Therefore, Reuven had the right to sell it. Reuven had the right to sell because Reuven was the titular owner, and therefore, because of that, ultimately, again, he has the right to sell it. Levi can't collect on the sale while Yaakov is alive, but once Yaakov dies, Levi has the ability to claim his purchase. Why? Kinyan Peros, Lavka Kinyan Aguf. Usage is not tantamount to ownership. Okay, so we'll say that's our machlokes. Says the Gemara. 1 second. We already had this machlokes. This is not a new machlokes. We've had this before. We'll say it's great. The itmar hamoches de peros. We'll listen to this beautiful case. So let's say again, I have a field, and I sell the peros to Reuven. So I own a field in Eretz Yisrael, and I sell my produce to Reuven. Okay, so we'll say, so now what's the halacha? So we'll say, so now this is a bikurim shaila. So we'll say, so now the shaila is Reuven, so Reuven owns the produce. Is Reuven obligated to bring bikurim, first fruits, or not? Now remember again, Reuven owns the produce, he doesn't own the land. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Amar, maybe Vikor. Rabbi Yochanan says, yep, he brings, and not only that, he reads the psukim. There's a recitation with bikurim. I will say that Rashbam says 4 lines up from before it gets wide. Vikore, mikra bikurim dikarina beha adama asher nasata li Hashem. Now I will say, part of mikra bikurim is this phrase: I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the land that He has given me. So Rabbi Yochanan says, not only does Reuven bring bikurim, but what? He says the pasuk thanking Hashem for giving him this land. Reish Lakish maybe ve'enokar. Reish Lakish says, no, I agree. You bring the bikurim, I absolutely agree with that. But halacha l'maisa, he doesn't read the psukim. Why doesn't he read the psukim? Because you can't thank Hashem for the land that Hashem is giving you. Why? You don't own the land. So that's the machlokes. Here we go. Rabbi Yochanan says that Reuven goes ahead and brings the bikurim and reads the psukim kasavar kinyan peros ke kinyan aguf dami. Rabbi Yochanan holds again that usage is tantamount to ownership, and therefore because Reuven has the right to usage, therefore he is considered to be halachically like the owner. Because he's like the owner, he could come and he could say the phrase, "Thank you Hashem for the land you have given me." Reish Lakish Amar maybe ve'enokar. Reish Lakish says he has to bring the bikurim, but he does not read the psukim. Why not? Kinyan peros lav ki kinyan aguf dami. Kinyan peros ultimately again is so usage is not tantamount to ownership. So we'll say, so the point over here is, you see, this is a pre-existing machlokes. So we'll say, in general, whenever you see a machlokes that's a pre-existing machlokes, and the Gemara restates the machlokes, it leaves us scratching our head a little bit, like, why are you bringing this up again? We already know this machlokes exists. So, of course, you can find a million different examples or manifestations of this machlokes, but it's not necessary. You said it once, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Why the need to say it again over here? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Good. Because what's Rabbi Yochanan will say like this: I normally hold kinyan peres ke kinyan aguf. Right? Usage is like ownership. Therefore, remember in the bikurim case, Rabbi Yochanan will say that Reuven, who gets the produce, right? Who I gave him the produce in my land, Reuven will bring bikurim, and I'll say the psukim. But in this case over here. Right? In this case over here, I will say, in this case, we need to go ahead and bring it out. I will say, what's this case? Father Yaakov gave over the property. Gave his property to Reuven, right? Gave him title today, right? Retains usage for himself. And after his death, Reuven gets the usage of the property. What happened? Reuven sold the property while Yaakov was alive, and now Reuven predeceases Yaakov. Rabbi Yochanan says that when Yaakov dies, Levi the purchaser does not get the produce. Why? Does not get the land. Why? Because Rabbi Yochanan holds kinyan peros ke kinyan aguf dami. Therefore, again, father was the real owner, and therefore son sold something that was not his. So Rabbi Yochanan says, even though I already espoused this in a different case, we have to restate it here. I'll tell you why. I might have thought like this: a father and a son is a different kind of relationship. So because it's a different kind of relationship, so therefore again, even though normally we say kinyan peres kinyan aguf, and therefore because father retains usage of the property, he is the true owner. In this case, where Reuven sold the field to Levi, the father's going to be like, fine, okay, I got it, I'll let the sale be valid. Even though, again, I am the quote-unquote owner of this field by dint of the fact that I have the usage, I'll be mochel in this case. Kamashmalan, no. Kamashmalan, that the father is not mochel. Kamashmalan, that kinyan peres and kinyan aguf in all cases, including a father's son. Therefore, because the father has usage, therefore he remains the owner, so to speak, not the titular, but the owner. And therefore, the sale that son Reuven does to purchase or Levi is an ineffective sale. And I'll say, by the way, that phrase is one of the most beautiful phrases you'll find in all of Shas. Abba legabe brei achule achel. What is the nature of a relationship between a father and a son? It's marked by one dominant feature: forgiveness. Forgiveness. If there's one thing you could always count on from your father, it is forgiveness. Now, that may or may not be true in the case of a human father, but it's absolutely unequivocally true in the case of Abba Bashamayim and the Ribono Shalom. The one thing you could always count on in your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mechila. If you want forgiveness, and you're willing to work for forgiveness, and are willing to become a Baal Tshuva, mechila is always there. And I will say, is this not the most beautiful feature of our relationship with Hashem? No matter what I do, no matter how badly I mess up, no matter how many times I mess up, no matter how many wrong turns I make in life, one thing you could always count on from your father is forgiveness. The father always forgives. That's the mantra. This is the source of our hope. This is the source of our confidence, the source of our optimism, the source of tshuva. Abba legabe brei achule achel. A father always forgives. And I both say, no matter what I do, sometimes I have to work harder to earn that forgiveness. Sometimes I have to work harder to undo the mistakes of the past. But no matter what I did, I can always find forgiveness with my father. Incredible. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says, "Afagav de ba'alma kinyan peres lavka kinyan aguf tami." Reish Lakish on the other hand says like this: even though normally kinyan peres lavka kinyan aguf, right, usage is not ownership. That's why Reish Lakish says, when I rent my field to Reuven has the produce, I retain the title. Reuven brings bikurim, but he does not recite the psukim. He does not recite the psukim. Why? Because he only has peros, not title. So even though that's true in that case over there, the Gemara says, in this case over here, I need to highlight this concept, or I need to discuss this. Why? I might have thought, I would have thought like this, right? So remember again, according to Reish Lakish, kinyan peros is not kinyan aguf. So usage is not ownership. Therefore, again, according to Reish Lakish, in this case, in our previous case, where Reuven, during the lifetime of his father Yaakov, sold the property to Levi, is it a good sale? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now again, the sale is not really valid until Father Yaakov passes away, but it works, because even though Father Yaakov has usage is not like ownership. Usage is not ownership, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, the sale works. I would have thought, in this case, I might have thought like this. And when is it true that kinyan peres like kinyan aguf? It's true, but when it comes to your own matters, so maybe a father, right? Maybe a father is not mochel on anything, right? And halacha l'maisa, again, a father will be much more insistent that the son doesn't have the ability to sell the produce, even though the father just retains peros. Maybe, again, since this is impacting him, the father, during his lifetime, he's not going to want any sale to anyone else, and maybe, again, his hakpada, his insistence on a non-sale or no sale, will ultimately prevent the sale from being chal. Kamash Mono. If you take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment, the Rashbam says in the wide lines, about 3 lines in. I'm sorry, wrong Rashbam. Wrong Rashbam. So again, we'll just read it inside the Gemara. So I'm going to thought like this. Call the Gabi Nafshe. Since in this case it's impacting the father himself, Afilu b'makom brei, even though he's dealing with his son, Nafshe adifale. Ultimately, his personal interests are more important. And in this case, the father's personal interest is that he retains the property, even though he only has peros. Maybe that should block the sale to a third party. Kamash Mulan that it does not. Kamash Mulan that Reuven the son has the ability to sell the property during his father's lifetime. Now again, halacha l'maisa, Levi the purchaser can't do anything with this purchase until Father Yaakov dies, but upon the death of Father Yaakov, the sale absolutely takes place. So we'll say, so what we come out with over here is a fundamental machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, which is an older machlokes. Kinyan peros ke kinyan aguf or lav ke kinyan aguf. Is usage tantamount to ownership? Rabbi Yochanan says yes. Reish Lakish says no. Even though this machlokes was already illustrated in the case of Bikurim, the Gemara explains we need to re-illustrate it over here, in this case over here, by the conveyance of property. Why? Because there are special unique aspects in this particular case. Well, so we'll stop over here for today. So again, we're stopping mid machlokes and Meretz Hashem resolution of this machlokes, resolution of the general machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Tomorrow's daf. We'll say shkoyach and a good Erev Shabbos. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone, and good Shabbos. In the morning.